You're tuned in to Get Right Fantasy.
Hey everybody, Adam Rank here.
What's up, friends? Daniel Dopp here from the Fantasy Focused Football Podcast over on ESPN.
It's Fabs here, Michael Fabiano from Sports Illustrated.
You know who you can trust if you've got some questions about your fantasy squad?
Want to check out a cool show on YouTube that'll help you get ready for the fantasy football season?
Check out the Get Right Fantasy Network.
Check out the Get Right Fantasy Network. If you are not subscribed, what are you waiting for? You want to lose your league?
Head on over to YouTube. Check out the Get Right Fantasy Network because they're doing everything they can to make you a better fantasy player.
You got to get right with the Get Right Fantasy Network.
You're tuned in to Get Right Fantasy.
Ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between or outside of it, welcome to Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan right here on the Get Right Fantasy Network, coming to you every Monday evening until week 1 of the NFL season. I am your host, Evan Sather. Tonight, my guest is a pretty big deal among fantasy football writers and my favorite AEW wrestling fan. He is a fantasy football writer and analyst for FTN Fantasy and FantasyPoints. Please welcome to the show, C.H. Herms. Herms, good to see you again, my friend. How have you been?
I have been doing all right, but I'm doing even better now that I'm here with you on the Get Right Fantasy Show. We have a lot of fun in store for everybody. This is going to be a blast.
We got to give love to those 10-team leagues, too. It's surprisingly a popular format when you look at like the YouTube views or just the people who want to join those mock drafts. I think a lot more people are in smaller leagues than they're willing to admit. I've seen the more toxic side of fantasy football where they're like, oh, 8 teams or 10 teams, that's easy mode, and you get better teams that way. But the strategy doesn't really change that much. You still got to compete, right?
Not only that, but also in smaller leagues, every team is better on average. So in theory, you are competing against stronger rosters across the board. So I don't really understand why people get all in a tizzy about the whole thing when it comes to stuff like that. It's more competitive the fewer people you have and the smaller the pool is, et cetera. I don't know. I think it's kind of fun no matter how you play it. As long as you're having a good time, that's really all that matters in the grand scheme of things anyway.
Yeah, because, I mean, even my home league is a 10-team Dynasty, one-quarterback league that I've been running since 2020, and I don't know about that number 10. Maybe it's just a part of getting older where it's harder to find people who can commit that is in your home league that you know personally that you want in. And that's just me, though. I mean, everybody plays differently, but 10 just kind of feels right, if that makes sense. Like, 12 is obviously the standard, but we definitely love the smaller leagues, and play just like you said. Play however you like, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the fantasy sports are supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be a thing that you do with your friends or coworkers or whatever. It's supposed to be a hobby. Like, yeah, competitive. Do your thing. Make it some sort of whatever incentive you have. If you want to put cash on the line, you have a trophy. All good, but it's still for fun. It's a fun game for fun. That should be the priority over anything else. And if you get too worked up about all those other details, then you're kind of losing the plot. So just enjoy the thing that you're doing with the people that you've agreed to do it with, and let that be that.
I was not joking earlier, too, when I said that you're my favorite AEW wrestling fan, just because, it's probably been a little while since I've seen you tweet about it, but it's also been a really long time since I've been to an AEW pay-per-view, too. I went to AEW Revolution in February of 2020, just before the COVID lockdowns happened. I don't think there was one match that I hated. Before we learned that Sammy Guevara kind of got inappropriate with women backstage, just watching him do like a 450 splash through a table, like I had never seen anybody do something like that live. Like I just stood up out of my upper deck chair, just like jaw agape. Like I couldn't believe that he was able to pull that move off. Like that was, even though that was 6 years ago, that still sits with me today.
No, and honestly, watching the stuff that a lot of those people do is just one of the most remarkable things in the world. Because unlike a lot of people, I was not allowed to watch professional wrestling as a kid. My mom completely like forbade it in our household. So I actually didn't start watching until I was 28 years old and I moved in with my roommate. I am still very new to watching wrestling in the grand picture of everything, but it has immediately become probably my favorite thing. I mean, fantasy football is still up there, don't get me wrong, but I am all about it. I am super locked in. I'm going to be going to Dynamite in Fairfax, Virginia coming up at the end of the month. It's going to be super fun. I love it. Dude, it's a remarkable thing. And AEW, the way that they market it is correct. It's where the best Russell. It is the best television product by far. The storylines are very interesting. There's no Pat McAfee involved, which is also very nice. And it's just, it's a real treat. I love tuning in every single Wednesday and Saturday. This isn't, I'm not paid to promote this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So if you've never watched it before, tune in to All Elite Wrestling on TNT or TBS.
I wouldn't say my parents were all that strict when I was growing up, Herms, but like I grew up during the attitude era and the Monday Night Wars in the late 90s and early 2000s. I had to go to CCD as a Catholic boy growing up on Monday nights, and then by the time I got home, that's when I would put on professional wrestling. So, I mean, I don't know if it was kind of anti-Catholic in a way, but I think it was kind of funny, like, you know, we're supposed to be just, I guess, good Christians, and then we're going home and watching just some whatever they could get away with on television that was considered raunchy X amount of years ago. But I have to admit, I haven't caught a ton of AEW on television, but if anybody says, hey, I got an extra pay-per-view ticket in Chicago, you want to go? Fuck yeah, I'm there. I'm never going to turn that down.
Oh, dude, I have still never I've still never been to a pay-per-view, but that is a huge thing on the priority list. I am very much looking forward to whatever that day is going to come, because I've been to the television, I think probably like 3 or 4 times at this point, but the pay-per-views, man, the quality of those matches and just how many of them there are, I'm sure it's an absolute blast, and I can't wait to have that experience for myself.
Oh, you got to let me know how that show goes, too. I'm so glad you're going to get to go.
It's going to be very fun. I'm looking forward to it.
You will not be disappointed. I mean, but yeah, we'll definitely chat more about that in a bit. But I actually wanted to get into a little bit of what you've been working on lately. You actually just published this earlier today, a 2026 NFL mock draft. Let me clean that up just a little bit here. I won't necessarily go through the whole article to encourage people to get over to FTN Fantasy and look at this, but it looks like you had one hell of a mock draft over here. Mendoza going at 1. I was a bit surprised to see Jeremiah Love fall all the way to 10, but that would still be a solid. Jeremiah Love would be an amazing pick for the Cincinnati Bengals, but so I guess without spoiling too much for the article, Herms, do you not see Herms being taken before 10? For sure.
I mean, I honestly think that Jeremiah Love is not going to fall outside of the top 5 probably, but the thing that I really tried to do was not include any trades, just because that can get really convoluted very quickly. And then the other thing is that I'm just not sold on the concept that the Tennessee Titans take the swing at number 4, if only because they still have such a long ways to go within their rebuild, that adding a running back this early in the process just doesn't really sit right with me. I could honestly, I can see them doing it. I think it would really help the offense. It would be something kind of fun, but I don't know. Wouldn't it make a little bit more sense for them to maybe look at receiver if they're going to add a weapon rather than going with running back? I think maybe that makes a little bit more sense. I just think in the grand scheme of things, Tennessee has bigger things to worry about than what is honestly a luxury pick. Like, you don't take running backs that high in the NFL draft unless your team is already in some sort of a much better position than they're in, for sure. But yeah, no. To get back to the original point of the question, though, yeah, dude, Jeremiah Love outside of the top 5, probably not going to happen. If it does, I could maybe see the Washington Commanders doing that at 7, or somebody trading up and just taking the swing that way. But I did see that he met with the Cincinnati Bengals today, which was very fun because I wrote this before that news came out. So I felt very justified in at least putting him in that spot initially. So that was pretty cool.
This mock draft definitely aged well considering that news. You're not wrong about that.
Oh, yeah.
So we've hit about the 10-minute mark. I would say that it's time to get us started here with this 10-team, one-quarterback dynasty PPR startup mock. Herms, my man, are you ready?
I have never been more ready for anything in my entire life. Let's do this.
Let's get it going. We got Gimme That Cheese at the 101 here to kick us off here. So this is probably not going to be much of a surprise of where it goes, whether it's Bijan Robinson or Jamar Chase. I mean, if it's Gibbs, even that would still be a solid pick. But outside of those three, though, Herms, I don't know who Gimme That Cheese will take if they get here on time to make their pick. But can you make a case at this point to make it JSN?
I think you certainly can. The only issue with that, I think, is the fact that he's probably never going to do what he did last year again. And I do have some concerns about what's going to happen with the offense now that Clint Kubiak has accepted the head coaching job out there with the Vegas Raiders. There's going to be a little bit of regression as far as that goes, but JSN is still the dude. He is a transcendently good talent and absolutely capable of getting 100 catches every single year, however many obscene amount of receiving yards. He's going to command a massive target share in this offense for as long as he wants to, and they paid him all that money for a reason. So, even if he doesn't reach those heights that he did this past year, because topping a career year like that is very difficult for any player, he's going to come relatively close, at least for the next several seasons to come, I would hope.
Right. I can see your point, too, because a Clint Kubiak is a big loss for the Seahawks offense. I can't remember who they hired to replace him, but a talent like a Jackson Smith and Jigba and a competent quarterback like Sam Darnold, which is a little bit weird to say considering how rocky Darnold's career was to start off, I can't see Jackson Smith and Jigba falling off too hard in that offense, being that there's no more DK Metcalf, there's no Tyler Lockett, and it doesn't look like that they want to give more work to Torrey Horton like a lot of people wanted to see too. So being an amazing wide receiver in that offense, I can't see how he falls below a top 5 wide receiver. And Doc Watson took him as a second wide receiver off the board too, ahead of Puka Nacua, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you just took Justin Jefferson. I don't hate that at all. And getting, what do they call him these days? Jay Jettas at 108, like, that's almost a steal, right?
I really think that maybe it just has to do with the fact that people aren't that excited about Kyler Murray. I think maybe people have some reservations based off of how his time in Arizona went and then also came to a very unceremonious end. But I think people have to realize, first, the limitations that came with playing under Cliff Kingsbury, because the reputation that he earned as some sort of offensive guru at the college level never really manifested itself at the professional level, whether it was his time in Arizona or when he was most recently the coordinator with the Washington Commanders. It's not as though any of his systems really took flight very much. I don't really know how much we can put that on Kyler Murray per se. I mean, obviously Murray has something to do with it, but also, the fact that we know it's probably not going to be J.J. McCarthy as QB1 should make people feel better about it. The baseline of play is going to be raised just enough that why wouldn't you buy back in on the guy who's routinely in the conversation for being the wide receiver 1 on an annual basis when he has somebody that can at least get him the ball somewhat decently. We've seen that, like, even when Carson Wentz was in there for a little bit last year, it was still really good. I think it was just the whole McCarthy part of the issue. So even if you don't like Kyler Murray, that's perfectly fine. But you have to admit that he is not completely terrible. He is an upgrade over what they had, and he's good enough to get Justin Jefferson the ball like 8, 10, 12, 15 times a game or whatever the hell it is. He's one of the best receivers in the league. I don't care. He shouldn't be falling this far.
I'm 100% with you on this, Herms, too, because, yeah, even when the quarterback is struggling the way J.J. McCarthy was, and even a washed-up Carson Wentz, that just goes to show how great of a teammate Justin Jefferson is, where I remember week 1 against my Bears in which they squeaked out that win over them. Jefferson just went up to McCarthy on the sideline and was like, hey, keep feeding me. I got you. That's a great wide receiver that you want to have to help boost you up. And I thought the Vikings did J.J. McCarthy kind of dirty, too, throwing him to the fire way too soon, having nobody to develop behind. Now they've got Kyler Murray to help him develop a bit, to learn a bit from a seasoned veteran like Murray. I think Murray sucks at the deep ball, but again, like, at least he's competent enough to feed the top guys, where Trey McBride made him look like $1 million. And now he's got TJ Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson. Kyler's not going to suck in Minnesota. I mean, he's not. I don't see him being a top 10 quarterback anymore, but I mean, with his legs and a shaky offensive line, yeah, I'm with you all the way, Herms. I don't see how this goes badly for Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you liked him before the whole McCarthy thing, then you should like him again. Like, it's really just as simple as that. I think overthinking it, anything beyond that, is just doing a little bit too much, and that becomes, a bit of a you problem, the proverbial you, not, So, like, I don't know. Justin Jefferson's the man. Also, I just have to say, not that this actually makes that big of a difference in the grand scheme of things, but those shows on Netflix, the whole, like, the quarterback series that they had, and then the little one that they did for the receivers. Justin Jefferson's a really cool dude. He was one of my favorite people to watch on that show. And even if, like, whatever you have to say about the football part of it, if you're just going purely on vibes and you're just trying to think of, like, a dude who is a cool guy that you would want to hang out with and also dominates on a football field, Justin Jefferson's that kind of dude. I also thought Amon-Ra St. Brown was pretty cool in that show too, but this is a little bit more about the other guy than him. But yeah, I don't know. Just love me some Justin Jefferson. Hope things go well for him moving forward.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that show, too. I haven't had Netflix in years, so I've been missing out on the NFL content that they've been putting out there as well, including some of the holiday games they've been trying to put on Netflix as well. They keep raising their prices, and I can't see how that helps their NFL product, in addition to Monday Night Raw, if you dare watch WWE these days.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, if it weren't for me, kind of just like siphoning my my subscription to Netflix, I definitely wouldn't be watching anything on there because it has become absurdly expensive. I think the only thing that I really care to have now that I am probably never going to stop paying for is HBO Max, but only because you get those special prices for the AEW pay-per-views, so makes it a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, you know it. And I mean, jeez, yeah, it's with the, man, I don't know if I want to go too far down the pro wrestling rabbit hole, but with the way WWE has been for, how many years now? Give me AEW any day, and I'll gladly go to any of the pay-per-views. Man, I keep wanting to go pro wrestling, but I think the people came to talk about football, so we'll save that more toward the end. So I saw that you went Brock Bowers and then Ladd McConkey at the 203 and then 308. I am all in on Ladd McConkey. I can't wait to see him have a great bounce back year in addition to Brock Bowers. You've been getting a lot of guys as you're making your 4th round pick here to get all these bounce back guys to build your team. I'm in love with this so far. So once you make this pick, I do want to hear what you think about Brock Bowers' outlook, with it looking like pretty much like it's going to be Fernando Mendoza throwing him the football.
Yeah, I mean, and if not right away, then I think them bringing in Kirk Cousins was pretty smart. The combination of those two being at the helm is going to be pretty sick. And I think the really fun thing about Bowers is that he's essentially a wide receiver. I know that he lines up in line and does some of the traditional tight end stuff, but he's a guy that you can deploy regularly from the slot and just use as a wide receiver. And you think about the kinds of receivers who are going to be really good in the kind of offense that Clint Kubiak puts together. Jackson Smith-Njigba ran a lot of his routes out of the slot. Brock Bowers runs a lot of his routes out of the slot. It's going to be basically the same kind of opportunity for him. So whatever you think of Mendoza or the oldie moldy old man version of Kirk Cousins that we have now, they're at least competent. Hopefully they have done enough to be able to fix some of the offensive line concerns. And dude, Bowers ending up somewhere in the neighborhood of, like, I don't know, like 120 some targets or something, like would not shock me at all, especially because you look at the rest of what the Raiders have on the roster. And, no offense to Trey Tucker, I also think that Jack Besh could be a pretty interesting player. He was somebody that I really liked coming into the draft last year, but he just didn't really get a lot of opportunity under Pete Carroll last year. For some reason, he felt compelled to give an opportunity to Tyler Lockett to, play out the end of his career instead of investing time in the rookie that they took on day 2. But there's just not a whole lot of talent around them besides Brock Bowers. So I don't know why you wouldn't hyper focus on a player like that and just pepper them with as many throws as you possibly can. I think that he is going to be an absolute volume monster this year and for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I completely agree with you on that part too, Herms, being that the Raiders also paid Jalen Naylor as their top wide receiver. I like him, he's good, but I don't think he's top wide receiver money. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the Raiders draft a wide receiver this year too, but you also bring up an interesting point for Jack Besh, if that's how you say his name. We didn't see him practically at all last season in his rookie year. It was looking like I forgot the other rookie's name who was looking like he was better than Jack Besh, but we need to see how this pans out for training camp, being that this is pretty much going to be a new-look Raiders offense and Brock Bowers with no more Jacoby Myers there, too. And does Ashton Jeanty finally have an offensive line worth a damn to run behind, too?
I certainly hope so, because, dude, I mean, the amount of time that he just got absolutely demolished at the line of scrimmage, if not behind the line of scrimmage, was absolutely painful. It's one of the stats that we track over at FTNFantasy.com. If you ever want to check out our NFL Stats Hub, there we go. Free plug. I'm a company man. Yeah, Ashton Jeanty was pretty high up there, number one by some distance. I think Amari and Hampton also had a little bit of issues with that too, but it was very much just Jeanty, massive gap, and then everybody else in that measure. And, it's unfortunate, but I think a lot of that kind of stems from the fact that, if I remember correctly, I think it was like Pete Carroll's son or something got put in charge of being the offensive line coach, and I guess he just didn't really know what was going on there. And then also, I think bringing in Chip Kelly to be the offensive coordinator initially just was not a very smart idea for them either. I think the combination of a lot of those things happening and having a head coach that, kind of like I was saying before, it was just incentivized to play the veterans over developing these young players that they were bringing in, despite the fact that I think he understood, Pete Carroll, that it was supposed to be a rebuild. Like you're supposed to be looking at this down the line. And the whole approach to last season didn't make any sense. And the people that were in charge of running it didn't make a lot of sense. Their decisions didn't make a lot of sense. I think whatever we can take away from last year is very minimal. I don't think that there's a lot that we can take from that and apply forward just because of how uniquely bad the situation was. But I don't know, the issue still remains. They gave an incredible amount of money to Tyler Linderbaum, which I guess was kind of cool. It's one step in the right direction as far as that goes, but it's pretty incomplete if the main goal is to, completely overhaul that unit. So they still, I don't remember exactly how many draft picks they have in this draft, but I hope they have enough to be able to take multiple stabs in the trenches there.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact number of picks they have this year too, but yeah, they need a lot of help. They always need help with their offensive line. I don't remember the last time they were actually good as a unit. And I also, speaking of the Raiders, I also wanted to ask you too, as of 13 minutes ago, the Raiders have made it official that Kirk Cousins is now a member of the Las Vegas Raiders. There was talk from Clint Kubiak that he does not necessarily want to throw a new quarterback into the fire, which we presume is going to be Fernando Mendoza. If Mendoza does not start this year, if it's Cousins, is Cousins going to be starting this whole season, or will he be benched by the double-digit weeks?
I mean, a lot of that kind of comes down to Kirk Cousins, I think when you sign a quarterback like that, you're signaling to everybody that you are at least going to give them a genuine run. You are at least going to let them have a proper opportunity to get the job, hold the job, do whatever they can to keep it. But you're also incentivized to see what you have in the future at some point. And for as good as Kirk Cousins was for, spurts last year, he's not quite what he used to be. I don't think the Raiders are going to be particularly good, especially playing in a division that has a team that was one ankle injury away from being in the Super Bowl, another team that has won multiple Super Bowls in the past, and another team that, had it not been for both of their starting offensive tackles going down, probably would have been a serious contender as well. So, I think probably by the time we get to, I don't know, I usually like to place the over-under line at Halloween. That's always been kind of my favorite spot to be like, if you can manage to not screw up around the time that people are dressing up and knocking on people's doors for candy, then you're probably in good shape. But if you start to falter a little bit before that, then I think the change is going to come pretty quickly. But I would, if I had to guess, we'll probably see Mendoza at some point in the double-digit weeks. Even if it does take until week 10, 11, 12, something like that, we will get him at some point in 2026. It just might take a little while.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. I love that. I love not doing power rankings or the over underline until Halloween, because that's basically the trade deadline, and that is when we know for sure which teams look like they're championship caliber, which ones are serious at pushing for a run. Which and that's not far away from the double digit weeks, which I mean, unless something happens to Kirk Cousins, we could be having to wait on Fernando Mendoza, who's ADP is probably going to be too high in redraft leagues, but so far we've only seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks go off the board so far. Man, Sleeper's ADP is all messed up right now. I keep having to try and get past a bunch of these quarterbacks that are just taken way too high. I swear I set up the scoring to be one quarterback format. That's how messed up this ADP is right now. I got to make this next pick. We'll okay, screw it. We'll go scary Terry McLaurin. Can't hate on the veterans here. More tight ends are starting to go off the board, including some rookies like Sadiq. A couple of rookies you've taken so far, which now includes Mark, what was his name? Mike Washington, who had some pretty good visits recently. You also have Casey Concepcion and Malachi Lemon. So I don't think we know exactly where their landing spots will be at this point, but I saw some skepticism for Lemon pertaining to his athleticism. Do you have any concerns about Lemon depending on landing spot?
Honestly, not really. I look at somebody like Makai Lemon and the skill set that he brings to the table as somebody who really dominates out of the slot, and also not that a lot of the drills at the combine are any massive indication of anything in the world. I don't want to overrate too much of that stuff when I'm doing my eval process, but I think his performance, especially in the gauntlet drill, the one where they basically just do the straight line speed, they have to do the whole thing and look, catch from both sides. The fluidity in which he was able to just run very completely in a straight line, not decelerate or break his concentration at all, and just snag every single thing that came his way is exactly what you want to see out of a guy that is going to be running a lot of his routes from that part of the formation and doing a lot of things in the shallow and intermediate parts of the field. I like players who are good at those things that get deployed that way, because it's typically a lower ADOT. The quality of the throws that are going to be coming from you from the quarterback are going to be higher. The chances of you catching them are going to be higher, et cetera, et cetera. And you think about players who are getting a lot of opportunities like that, they tend to be pretty high volume players. They tend to be guys, kind of like it. I really hate doing this because it's incredibly helmet scouty. It's incredibly lazy, but I think the value proposition with Makai Lemon is a lot of the same stuff that you get with Amon-Ra St. Brown, another former USC receiver, kind of a smaller guy, but because of where he lines up, because of how he is used, is always going to be a valuable piece, especially in half and full point PPR formats. We want these guys that are going to have a lot of high volume earning opportunities. I did a study into, last year's receivers and had a whole write-up about it over at ftnfantasy.com. I think it was at the beginning of February or something. And it was something like close to 50% of the wide receivers who finished within the top 50 of PPR points per game last year, an even higher number of them who finished inside the top 24. And I think it was like 2/3 of the dudes who finished with inside the top 12 all ran at least 30% of their routes from the slot. It's just a thing. It's very important for you to be able to not only dominate on the outside, but also to be able to move around the formation into the interior, especially because, there are very talented high-end slot corners in the NFL, but more often than not, you are going to end up facing the most talented defenders on the perimeter on an NFL field. So I don't know. It's a very long way of saying, I just think that the type of player that Mekhi Lemon is, and because of where he's going to dominate, is somebody that I want to invest in heavily.
Yeah, no, I think you made a great case, too, about people overreacting to how often wide receivers run slot routes, where I remember this being a big issue on the Seattle Seahawks last year, too. Oh, they got JSN who runs a lot of slot routes. Oh, my God, they just got Cooper Kupp now. He runs too many slot routes, too. What are we going to do? Hey, let's relax a bit here. JSN's the real deal. He's not gonna lose all of his work to Cooper Kupp. I mean, if anything, it screwed over Cooper Kupp shareholders, but I think that's also kind of coming with just age and getting beat up over the years. But hey, they both have Super Bowl rings now, so for real football, that's great. But and that's kind of coming back to what I was asking about with JSN being a top pick earlier. Like, I just can't see how you go wrong with any of that. But I'm going to take a big shot on Tony Pollard, being that I took a Jeremiah Love, just in case the Titans end up surprising us and taking Jeremiah Love. But I saw the running back starting to go as well. Coming back to your team, though, Herms. So Jordan Addison, Jaylen Warren, who still should be pretty the beneficiary of that backfield, along with Rico Dowdle, should be stealing a lot of work from Dowdle, catching some passes as well. And you had an accidental auto pick with Woody Marks. I did want to ask you about Woody Marks. Now that he's going to be getting work behind David Montgomery, what does the future look like for Woody Marks if he's on your dynasty team at this point?
I still feel pretty good. And luckily, even though for some reason my browser kind of slowed down and it autoed, he was in my queue. So I did specifically want Woody Marks. So I do feel pretty good about that. I don't know. He's good. He's really good. And when he ended up getting a lot of the volume last year, it wasn't remarkably efficient, but a lot of that just has to do with the fact that the Houston Texans offensive line wasn't particularly great, but he still did fine. And I think that regardless of the addition of David Montgomery, he is still very much the one between the two that is the pass catcher. I think that hopefully they will be able to feature him a little bit more in that sort of, role as time, moves on and we get, into this season. But he was one of my favorite running backs in the class. He was somebody that I got an opportunity to see when I was down at the Senior Bowl that year. I think that the way that he runs a lot of his routes out of the backfield as a pass catcher is pretty remarkable. And I also think he just has very good size to be a runner between the tackles and do all that kind of stuff. He's a versatile guy that can do a lot of the things that you really want. And also David Montgomery is like old, like I think if anything, this is, maybe we're worried about this for a season, but like once we get past this and we get into 2027, I don't think anybody's really going to be panicking about David Montgomery then. And the fun thing about Dynasty is that we will have these players for 26 and 27 and 28 and 29 and so on and so forth. So at that point, I'm still willing to bet on one of my favorite players from that draft class that is good on both, the ground and through the air.
You are the most pro Woody Marks person I think I've ever spoken to, where pretty much everybody I know has been wanting to get off of him. I actually sold him for DJ Moore straight up in my Dynasty League, like 11 days before David Montgomery got traded to the Texans, and I'm still pretty happy about that. And, I mean, you're still not wrong about Woody Marks about his versatility, too. He may not be a guy that invites contact the way Dameon Pierce did, but at least he's got some good moves to avoid contact, which is not a bad thing either in football. It's also a good way for longevity, too. Running backs that take a lot of contact, you worry about losing to injury or just having to cut their careers short. But at the end of the day, if something were to happen to David Montgomery, just because he's, well, an older running back, like you pointed out, he's probably going to be leading a timeshare, depending on who else they have back there. I was not overly impressed with Woody Marks' rookie year, but hey, he's got time to prove me wrong, right?
Not only that, but honestly, the more just thinking about what the backfield's probably going to look like, I think that Woody Marks leads the timeshare anyway. I mean, you saw, especially toward the back half of last year, just how much David Montgomery's involvement, and not even just his touches, but just his snap share in the Lions offense had continued to dwindle to a point where, like, yeah, he was still out there, he was still doing things, and he was getting pretty close to double-digit touches every single week, but it became the Jahmyr Gibbs show. It became very obvious that the team wanted to prioritize the other players that they have, particularly a guy who, like Woody Marks, pretty good on the ground and also as a pass catcher. So I think that there are a lot of, parallels to that situation, just in terms of, the fact that there is a younger option who can do a little bit more of, the all around kind of game. I do think that Marks still leads the backfield, even if it is more of like a 60-40 thing. Maybe if we get into closer to like a 55-45, even if Montgomery is annoying, I don't think he necessarily becomes the runaway leader by some distance that makes it so that Marks is completely ineffective.
So you're saying don't buy David Montgomery if you've been wanting to do so.
I mean, look, hey, the chance to do that, I think, has definitely passed. But hey, I think it really depends on what the Texans do in the draft. And I think that the difficult thing they have with where they're picking in the first round is that I don't know how many offensive linemen are going to be able to make it to them. Because, like, they need to fix that really, really bad. And it's going to take quite a long time, but I'm optimistic, I guess, just because maybe I'm just – I think there's part of me just lying to myself a little bit because I really like CJ Stroud, and I want to believe that somewhere in there is the guy closer to the version of the guy that we got in his rookie season than anything we've seen over the past couple of years. I think that's really my whole thing when it comes to the Texans, is just trying to manifest it and just will it into existence that they're going to improve. But I don't know. I mean, I could be proven wrong, and also if David Montgomery did end up having some sort of career resurgence down here and it did get flipped a little bit and he is leading it, that wouldn't necessarily shock me either. I think it could be pretty fun for him if he gets that run. I think maybe part of me is also kind of just basing this off of the results that we got last year when it was Marks and Nick Chubb. But if we had to pick between the two veterans right now, who would you rather have at their current points in their career, Nick Chubb or David Montgomery? I would much rather be trotting out David Montgomery at this point.
So you're also saying you have no more faith in Joe Mixon.
I don't even know. Like, does he still have the foot? I don't even know. Like, the fact that we just never really got an update on that still blows my mind.
I was wondering for a while if he was even still alive.
Yeah, I mean, like, the rumblings on that came out first in, like, I want to say it was like early July. And then there was like a small follow-up on it in August. And then it just went radio silent until I think it was like after Thanksgiving. Somebody asked D'Amico Ryans about it. And he was just like, yeah, I don't know. We're probably not going to see him. But, okay.
That's right. Cool. He basically did say something like that.
Yeah, it was just the most like direct non-answer answer that is still an answer. I don't know. Like it. No, we know nothing about Joe Mixon. I don't know if Joe Mixon knows what's going on. It's really hard to tell. But I hope he's having a good time. I hope that he's made his money and he's doing whatever he has to do. But no, in terms of him being on a football field ever again, I really don't think we have to worry about that.
Yeah, as evident by this 10-team Dynasty Startup draft that has completed, yeah, Joe Mixon is obviously nowhere to be found. Like, at this point, you're better off taking some shiny new rookies and hoping for the best depending on their landing spots. And speaking of the Houston Texans terms, if I can be the selfish host for a second, looking at my team, I built myself a CJ Stroud and Nico Collins stack. How do, or not so much how do you go wrong with this, but is this a stack that's going to be valuable in the Dynasty format? Not that we necessarily need to stack, but would this be a stack you would absolutely want on your team?
I just confessed more or less that I am still one of the high guys on CJ Stroud. Like, I still think there's something there. So I am choosing to believe that it makes a lot of sense. And also, whatever we can say about CJ Stroud, the one thing that has continued to work despite all of the other struggles is his connection with Nico Collins. Like, that has at least been consistently good enough the whole time that we can feel pretty good about that component of the offense. So, I mean, yeah, if you feel good about Nico, and you feel even remotely good that something close to the rookie version of Stroud is still in there, then YOLO. Absolutely, go for it.
The disrespect that Nico Collins gets as an elite wide receiver, I feel like a lot of people don't even acknowledge Nico as an elite wide receiver, but dude, he can get like easily double-digit targets when the offense is clicking from CJ Stroud or even Davis Mills for that matter. The guy always finds ways to get the ball from the wide receiver, even quietly, as like a top 15 guy. Like, how long has it been? Like, Nico Collins at this point, has he ever been anywhere below? Yeah, he was wide receiver 8 last season in PPR leagues. Like, what are we doing here? How do we get this guy to be taken more seriously?
I don't know. I think it's really just a matter of people being able to see it to believe it with the Texans in general. I think it really just comes down to that. Like, once they, kind of take the steps forward that they need to, hopefully if that offensive line improves enough to the point where CJ Stroud has time to make choices, then maybe people will start to feel a little bit better about it. I think that just overall the team environment is kind of dragging it down. I think we get a lot of the same issue in terms of people valuing Garrett Wilson too. Like, regardless of what you think of him as a football player, I think that there are still people who are like, yeah, but he's on the Jets. And as long as you're hung up on that, it doesn't matter how much you like the player. I think that a lot of that rings true with Nico Collins as well. I think there's parallels as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that one too. I've been praising Garrett Wilson his whole career, who, he went through multiple different quarterbacks when Aaron Rodgers was his quarterback in 2024, and then he finishes quietly as wide receiver 10 in PPR leagues. That unfortunately didn't seem to happen. Actually, where did he finish last year? Yeah, unfortunately he was 62 because he got injured, but, give him a full season with a quarterback that can get him the ball and 101 catches. This guy can be a top 10 wide receiver too. But yeah, being that Geno Smith is his quarterback, what do you think about Garrett Wilson at this point, Herms? Can he at least get to top 20 status again?
I absolutely think he can. And honestly, I think I'm going to end up being on an island with this, or at least a very lightly populated island when we get to the summertime, because Geno Smith isn't that bad. I think a lot of the issues that we saw with them last year stems from everything that we said about the Raiders earlier. I'm not going to repeat all of that. If people really want to hear that, just hit rewind, and then you can come back, and then we can do all of that. But, like, Geno Smith is still pretty good. He is competent. And one of the things that the Jets do genuinely have going for them is that they've always had an offensive line that's not like complete ass. Like, I think that that's also kind of nice. They've always invested in that, regardless of, how much other nonsense is going on throughout the organization and the many other problems that they still face with their roster. They at least have that going for them, even with the loss of Elijah Vera Tucker staying in the division, going to New England. I think it's actually going to work out pretty well. I don't hate the idea of them just punting on the whole quarterback thing until next year, because they're going to have a bunch of picks next year as well. They're still going to suck bad enough to pick super high again. And next year, it might not be the same kind of situation that we're in now, where there's Fernando Mendoza, however large of a tier break it is, whatever, your opinion is, whatever it is, there's at least a break, no matter how big, between him and the next guy. So I don't know. I'm very optimistic about it. And also just Garrett Wilson's good. He's one of the most talented receivers in the entire NFL. He can attack from anywhere in the formation. He is phenomenal. I will always buy in on that talent, especially because he falls, because he's on the Jets and nobody likes the Jets. But I still like it anyway, because as long as he's good at playing football, then I don't really care.
I think you brought up a great point, too, about the Jets' offensive line, never mind the skill players. Unfortunately, Justin Fields has always been the type of quarterback to hold on to the ball if he can't find his first or second reads right away before he has to take off running for his life. But when they drafted Armand Membu last year as a guard, I really, really love that first-round pick on their part as 7th overall. He was a phenomenal offensive lineman for Mizzou, and obviously he can't make the entire unit better, but if you're going to improve that offensive line, that's the direction you go in. And it's a shame that the Raiders can't take a page out of this book with building at least a decent offensive line that can get some time for a guy like an Aaron Rodgers who has a little more talent in the pocket, but it's kind of like what you were saying, too. Geno Smith is also a pretty good pocket guy, too, if he can find Garrett Wilson in time. And, hey, they're not the Raiders, too, right?
Honestly, getting out of Las Vegas was the best thing that could have possibly happened to him. And even though, depending on who you ask, it's not that much of an upgrade, quote unquote, going to the Jets, but look, it's objectively better.
Totally. Ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between or outside of it, so as we're 45 minutes in, 46 now, wanted to thank you real quick for tuning in. Before we continue with the show, too, please hit the like button on this YouTube video if you're watching on YouTube. Same thing if you're watching on Twitter. Like the live stream on that particular tweet. Helps us out. We greatly appreciate that as well. Herms, coming back to your team as well here. So we talked a bit about the first several rounds and the rookies that you selected as well. Finishing this off with one quarterback in Herbert and then Josh Downs. I wanted to ask you about the Colts wide receiver room after they traded Michael Pittman Jr. to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now they're going to be presumably rolling with Alec Pierce and now Josh Downs. Who's the top wide receiver now for this team?
Such a tough, I don't know. And I think it really depends on if giving Alec Pierce all of that money means that they're going to deploy him differently or not. I think the way that he was used was pretty smart, but it's also not a role that's going to get you a ton of volume in the grand scheme of things anyway. That's the issue with having those field stretching downfield dudes, is that for as fun as they are and for as good as they are for NFL offenses, it's difficult to rely on them for fantasy, because if they get 5 targets in a game, it's that's a good day, but more often than not, you end up, maybe they get the ball thrown to them 3 times, maybe 4 times or so. And then you have to hope that they connect on a pass that's hurtling 20 yards through the air. The whole thing, and kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about why I really like these slot receivers, because the lower ADOT, higher likelihood that you catch the ball, etc. It's a better quality throw. I think from a volume standpoint, if I had to just bet on who I think is going to get more because of the type of receiver that they are and where a lot of those looks are going to come from, it would be Josh Downs. But the amount of money they just gave to Alec Pierce is an ungodly amount of cash. It would make sense for them to throw him the ball a lot more than they did before. But again, it's does that come at the expense of him being utilized differently outside of what clearly worked very well for, if we remember, I think it was through week 9 or 10, one of the most efficient offenses in like modern NFL history. Like it fell off because Daniel Jones got hurt even before things got, I don't remember what the injury, he popped his Achilles, right? But then he also, even before that happened, it was like a small little fracture in his knee or something. You know what I mean? Like it was starting to trail off already. But before any of that happened, the Colts were just like nuking teams into oblivion. It was so good.
So basically the answer is Tyler Warren is the top wide receiver on the team.
Actually, I mean, probably. That probably makes the most sense. I mean, and especially, obviously the money stuff plays into it for sure. But if we just think about overall investments, like taking Warren as high as they did in the NFL draft is about the rough equivalent of paying somebody tens upon billions of dollars. So, like, yeah. Plus, like, he's just super good. I don't know why you wouldn't want to get somebody like Tyler Warren the ball a lot more often. He is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and they've locked in Daniel Jones to stick around with the Colts as well, so at least he's got that consistent chemistry that will at least be with him for the foreseeable future as we try to look at teams in a 3-year window, being that, we just never know what's going to change. But being that this draft has finished up and the players will not be changing, the strangest thing happened in this mock draft. I've never seen two people leave a mock draft midway through, which is bizarre. So we'll just call them Team 3 and Team 6 in the meantime. But Herms, out of all 10 of these teams, even if you select yourself, which is okay too, who do you feel had the best draft out of all 10 of these guys?
It's really tough to say just because I think that a lot of people did a really good job with this. But honestly, like I'm gonna give some props to you, my dude, especially because I really like what you did with the running back room and how you did a lot of that at a discount. Because like obviously the early investment in Love, getting Hendo and Judkins, pretty sick. But waiting around, what I would love to hear your perspective because I had Kenny Gainwell in my queue. I think there is a lot of intrigue with where he is now. But it depending on who you ask, you might get some different answers. Where do you think he is going to end up finishing? If you just had to predict, we're in December, the fantasy season is already over. Kenny Gainwell has finished RB blank in PPR.
I think Kenneth Gainwell is going to finish somewhere between RB26 and RB33. I think he's going to be somewhere in that range, and that's based off of PPR volume alone. He is a better pass catcher than Bucky Irving, and I don't think Bucky Irving is all that good of a running back. He's mostly efficient on the ground when they get the ground game going, but with how much worse the offensive line has gotten for the Buccaneers under Todd Bowles over these last couple of seasons, I am not a big believer in Bucky Irving, which is, if like those of you watching, if you've ever, paid attention to who I've talked up and talked down over the years, I've never been high on Bucky Irving. I don't think he's that good of he's better than Rachaad White. We don't need to argue about that part, but Gainwell is going to snipe a lot of touches and be better at it than Rachaad White ever was, who Rachaad White is now with the Washington Commanders. But I have Gainwell somewhere in the low 20s, early 30s range for PPR leagues, somewhere in there. I mean, unless something happens to Bucky Irving, that will raise his value, but I still think he's good enough for flex value on a weekly basis.
I tend to agree, man. And I think one of the other things that gets overlooked a lot is the contract that he signed. One of the things that I've also done this offseason, I did another version of this article last year, but then I kind of re-updated it a little bit for, this year. I like looking back at the recent history of NFL free agency and really trying to see what we can glean from these contracts and how they kind of translate or frankly don't translate to fantasy. Spoiler alert, wide receiver contracts basically never matter, folks. But for running backs, on average, if you make at least $7 million in average annual value, the odds of you finishing as a top 24 back are close to like over 80-something%. Like, it is ridiculous how often there is that correlation between that money and that production from running backs. And Gainwell hit the threshold. They gave him, I think it was a 2-year, like $15-some million deal. Like it's right there at the bottom of that threshold, but he meets it. It's a lot of money to give to a running back, even if they do still like Irving. You don't invest that for nothing if you're not going to get a guy out there. And I don't know. Like Irving, I think he's a perfectly capable pass catcher, but I think that there is a difference between being a capable pass catcher as a running back and being a natural pass catcher as a running back. You know what I mean? There are guys that you can feel pretty good about doing like very basic screens and like that's about it. You don't want guys out there, running these angle routes and doing all these crazy things like that, but like you can do stuff like that with a Kenny Gainwell, and you add that dimension to this offense for a reason. I don't know. I really think that people just aren't giving enough credence to it. Maybe because it took a while for Gainwell to truly break out or whatever. Maybe people are held up by the fact that, the only reason he did that last year is because he was, essentially just like the Steelers wide receiver 2. They didn't really have anybody else to throw to. And it's like, I mean, you're not wrong. I'm not going to say that that's a complete lie, but he still had to do it. You still have to go out there and do it, and he did it, and he got rewarded. So why aren't we more excited about this?
To those people who are saying that Kenny Gainwell was the wide receiver 2 on the Steelers, if it's an Arthur Smith offense, it's definitely a tight end who's the wide receiver 2. Let's be honest. It's one of their 3 tight ends in a carousel. That could be Cole Pruitt. It could be Darnell Washington. It could be any of those guys. But I don't know who wrote this on Rotoballer, Herms, but they tend to agree with you that Kenny Gainwell's 2-year, $14 million contract, Bucky could be losing some touches, considering that, yeah, he did have to deal with that shoulder injury, but even before he got hurt, he did not look that good. He had a couple of games where he didn't even break 3 yards per carry against the Jets and the Falcons, and those are not good run defenses. Like, how do you even explain that to Bucky stands?
I don't know. I mean, Bucky Irving is a fun player. I'm really glad that he, kind of overcame a bad combine, ended up in a place where he got some opportunity. He did pretty well as a rookie. It's a fun story. It's a very fun story. But at the end of the day, he's still a super late round guy, a little undersized, not necessarily the most explosive athlete in the world. I wasn't sold on taking him as a top 12 RB in ADP last year. And that was before Gainwell showed up and before last year even happened. So anybody who's going to try and talk me into it now, like, respectfully, you're nuts. Like, I don't understand how that's supposed to work. It just doesn't make sense. The math isn't mathing.
I made a YouTube short on my Barely Fantasy YouTube channel discouraging people from taking Bucky Irving as their RB1. And yeah, I got flamed a lot in the comments, people accusing me of wanting to hoard Bucky Irving in my leagues, which I thought was kind of funny. And just people acting like that, that I'm just flat out wrong. I didn't count on Bucky Irving getting injured, but man, I didn't expect him to fall off this bad in his second season where, even though, obviously he missed 7 games where he still got 173 carries compared to his 207 in his rookie year. But yeah, he wasn't anywhere near as efficient or as productive as he was in this Todd Bowles offense, compared to just what we thought he could do. And to hit the point home, now that Kenneth Gainwell signed that big contract, averaging $7 million a year, to your point earlier, Gainwell could end up finishing inside. He could slip inside the top 25 by accident with the kind of money he's making now for the Buccaneers.
I mean, shit, he finished pretty high inside the top however many in scoring last year. And that was on, look, I lifelong Steelers fan. It's been a tough road the last several years. But if he could do that in that dumpster fire of an offense, he's working with Zach Robinson now. Like for as much as Josh Grizzard was, he was okay during his time as the Bucs offensive coordinator, I guess. But being able to bring in Zach Robinson over from Atlanta, dude, this is a legit offense. Like this is, and if he did that well last year in that, I think he's got a great shot at being able to do that this year. I think honestly, like I feel pretty good about drafting both, assuming that people sort of catch on to the reality of the situation, and Bucky Irving falls maybe closer to, like, I don't know, if he's going around like RB 17, 18, 19, something like that in drafts, like if it becomes a little bit more of a understandable price tag, I could see maybe wanting to attack whatever part of the Bucks backfield falls to you. But if it comes down to one or the other, I'm assuming it's probably going to be Gainwell at the discount, and I am absolutely here for it.
Same. That was why I took him at the 11.5, just ahead of Tony Pollard, which I think that could be some solid, like I was saying, some solid flex volume on a weekly basis, assuming he splits most of his work with Bucky Irving. So as much as I'd love to keep going on this, we are running a bit out of time, but before we start to wrap things up, I did want to tell you all about a quick supporter of the show, Underdog Fantasy, the best and easiest place to play fantasy sports. We enjoy their best ball draft tournaments and live stream them all off season. In best ball leagues, all you have to do is draft your team and that's it. No need to do anything with your teams all season long. No waivers, no trades, and no weekly lineup setting. You can even draft hundreds of teams if you'd like, and you never have to manage them. Best ball is a great way to learn player values and ADP for your regular fantasy football drafts. Also, give their pick'em contest a try, where all you have to do is pick higher or lower on player stats such as total yards and touchdowns. Sign up with our promo code GETRIGHT and receive a 50% deposit match of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Any deposit exceeding $2,000 will be capped at $1,000 in bonus cash. Download the fastest growing fantasy app from your app store now. Make that first deposit and play today. Be sure to visit UnderdogFantasy.com to check your state's eligibility. Please play responsibly. You must be age appropriate and present in your state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-MY-RESET or 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In the state of New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Herms, I am so glad you got to join us for this particular small-ish 10-team Dynasty Startup mock draft. It was a good time with you, man. I'm so glad to at least hear what you think about the latest trends with these players. And hell, I mean, I could talk about Kenneth Gainwell for the next hour, but I don't know if people are that interested in him.
Probably not. But that's the kind of fun that we have here on the Get Right Fantasy channel. This is why people tune in. This is the good stuff. Excellent show, and a lot of that has to do with you, my good sir. So thank you for having me on this, for having this opportunity for us to talk about these things and creating the environment for it to all happen.
I love hearing that, Herms. I genuinely appreciate that too. Ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between or outside of it, this has been another episode of Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan. One last time, I'd like to thank my guest CH Herms for joining me this evening. Please be sure to follow Herms on Twitter at ch_Herms and on Bluesky at herms.bsky.social. Be on the lookout for his work on FTN Fantasy and FantasyPoints. Herms, is there anything else you'd like to promote that the people should know about?
Honestly, if you have to pick one or the other, just follow me on Bluesky. X is a hellscape, and nobody should ever go there for any reason. And also, if you've never watched professional wrestling before, tune into All Elite Wrestling on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on TBS. Just give it a shot. It's fun. I swear it's really fun.
He's not lying. It is fun. Like their whole roster. I mean, they even have Edge as Adam Copeland now. You love to see it. I mean, it's same thing with the old Dean Ambrose. Same thing with the old Dean Ambrose too, which I saw him in a jiu-jitsu tournament not long ago. But that's I'd love to get more into martial arts too, but I think that's another topic for another day. Let's get out of here before we go too long over this hour here. So, folks, we're gonna wrap this up for tonight. Be sure to tune in next week for a 12-team, 1-quarterback PPR IDP Dynasty Startup Draft. Joining me for that one is a guy who's been great in the comments all season long here. Big Game Jamie Perogue is going to be my guest next week. He's with Going for Two Fantasy 6-Pack and the IDP Center. He should be perfect for this particular Dynasty Startup mock draft. Don't forget to subscribe to the Get Right Fantasy Network. Be sure to tune in on Friday night as well for the next episode of Friday Night Mocks with Kendall and Classic Mike right here on the Get Right Fantasy Network. Have a great night, everybody. We will see you all next week. Take care.
Fantasy.